This is the perfect pairing of a PC that you can get right now if you're trying to go only Team Blue, and it comes in at a really respectable price point. Let's talk about it. So this PC build came together accidentally because Corsair sent over a bunch of parts for me to put together my upcoming editing rig. I'm expecting to put a 13900K with a 4070 Ti, 4080 or 4090, haven't decided yet, into the system, but it wasn't quite ready for me to actually build, so I had to build it live over on our Twitch channel with the parts we had lying around, which happened to be the i5-13400 and an ARC A770. And when you put these things together, you actually get a mightily capable gaming PC. So the parts that we have for this build are the Corsair 5000D case. This thing is extra spacious with plenty of room for 360mm fan up front, 360 on top, a rear exhaust, and just open air so that you can have little trinkets and gadgets that you might want into your PC. And hosting that CPU, we're anticipating putting a 13900K in there, as I mentioned, but we have the NZXT N7Z790 motherboard. Plenty for super fast RAM, can hold all of the storage that I need for my editing, and you can't go wrong with that black and white color scheme. As mentioned, we have the 10-core, 16-thread 13400, which comes in at only a price point of $240. In a mid-tier chip, we are getting the same amount of cores that we used to get from the i9-10850K, something that costs about double what you can currently get the 13400 for. Competition is very good. For the RAM, we have 64 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 megahertz Corsair Dominator Platinum RGB. This is Corsair's flagship RAM kit at a great speed that's going to work with the CPU that I'm planning to put on in here. A little bit too much for the 13400, but I'm going to give you some details on how you could potentially scale down the build to make a lot more sense for you at home without really sacrificing on any sort of performance. Cooling the chip, we have Corsair's iCUE H100 Elite LCD XT, so that allows us to put an actual image on the CPU cooler block and display whatever we want. Then when you combine that with the AF120 RGB Elite fans and a Commander Pro, we have a great setup to test out Corsair's brand new iCUE Mural setup, which is part of their iCUE software, but now allows you to actually get a whole host of functionality when it comes to controlling lights inside your actual environment. So you can see that there's some flashing lights on the set right over there, and that's actually being controlled by this PC right here because it's connected to our Philips Hue bulbs that we have here in the office. But on top of that, it also has Nanoleaf integration, so if you get something like the Nanoleaf lines or the regular panels, you can connect that to iCUE to create murals and scenes that actually reflect what's going on your PC. Or you can have it set up to mirror the content that you're potentially watching so that the lights in the background actually help reduce eye strain and you get a little bit of more ambiance. Corsair updated iCUE to be a lot more robust. This mural software is really cool. All of the Philips Hue bulbs are flashing right now. Kyler, isn't it amazing?
Yeah, this is awesome.
Isn't it neat, right? Like all of the lights are synced to this PC right here. But that's not the only new thing that we actually have in this build from Corsair, because they also sent over their RM850X power supply, which is the new shift version that has the power connectors on the side of the power supply as opposed to the back side, which makes it for way better cable management. It allows you to plug it in and route all of the modular cables much easier, because previously the way you have to do it is either fight in the little space in the power supply basement or make sure you have all of the cables pre-installed before you slot in the power supply, which makes things like upgrading or swapping out things way harder down the line and potentially leads to extra cable clutter underneath because you just shove the cable down there because you don't want to unplug it if you don't need the cable that you're removing. I don't know why it took so long for the PC industry to get here, but the fact that Corsair did it first, like, this is a genius move to have side connectors on a power supply. I don't see myself ever wanting it on the back side of it ever again. Wasn't it better for cable management, Kyler?
I loved it.
Then for storage, we have the MP600 Pro LPX 2 terabyte, which is going to store all of my editing data. And then lastly, we obviously have the ARC A770 limited edition graphics card in here, which goes for about $350. And the ARC software, I don't have it connected to iCUE, but the natural colors on the ARC GPU kind of match up with the mural that I chose with the iCUE software. So it all kind of cohesively flows together, but we'll be swapping it out for probably a GPU that actually does have have IQ support. So all told, this system right here is $2,158, but that's not the sensible way you should ever build a 13400 plus A770 PC. As I mentioned, this is solely because I'm waiting on my other parts to get here for my PC build. But with the 13400 and the Arc A770, you should scale it down a little bit, and you can come in at a price point under $950 for a PC that has 10 cores and a really capable 1080p gaming card that also supports things like AV1 encoding, which is great for us as we're rendering out videos that now can be supported on AV1 platforms. So we can start off with the 13400 for $240. You don't need to add a CPU cooler because it comes with one already. Then you can get a pretty decent B760M motherboard. The DS3H Gigabyte version does work really well. It's $120, but gives you the RAM support and the SSD support that you're gonna need. Now for the rest of the parts, we went purely with Corsair because you can get a great deal on a whole host of different parts. So the LPX memory that's traditional, 16 gigabytes, DDR4, 3200, $43. You're likely not gonna be RAM bottlenecked going from DDR5 down to DDR4 on something like the 13400. It might show up in a few synthetic or CPU heavy applications, but in terms of gaming, you're really not gonna see a whole lot of difference. And then instead of the 5000D airflow, you should probably scale on down to something like the 4000D airflow that we have right back here. That's only $95. You can get a great price on that. You would only need something like a CX650M power supply, around $80. And then you would only need a 1 terabyte SSD, typically get something like the MP600 for $78. And then when you add in that 13400 for $240, the Arc A770 8 gigabyte, because you're not VRAM limited on the A770 at 1080p, which is where the card should be playing, you're looking at $290 for that, which rounds out to $946. If you want to stay at the 16 gig version, you're going to be pushing closer to that $1,000 mark, but the performance that you get out of 10 cores, 16 threads, and the A770 is actually quite remarkable. So let's take a look at the benchmarks that we have here at 1080p high with these two parts together. In a game like CSGO, we're looking at 370 FPS average thanks to the high IPC increase that we get from the 13400. And this 370 FPS in CSGO is notable because this is where Intel's cards struggled when they first launched, but thanks to new driver updates and everything that they've been doing, it performs way better in DirectX 9 games to the point where 370 FPS and the 1% and 0.1% lows are in line with what I would expect from something like a mid-tier AMD or an NVIDIA GPU. Intel's done a lot of work on the A770 since launch, and it was a real good experience of me testing it. I didn't have any major hiccups or software bugs that I could speak of during all of this testing. In a game like God of War, again at 1080p high, we're looking at a 72 FPS average. Hogwarts Legacy, the A770 is more than capable, coming in at 88 FPS. Spider-Man Remastered comes in at a solid 91.1 FPS average. Returnal, 88.6 FPS. The Witcher 3, we managed to average 79.3 FPS on the brand new update that they've brought to it. Modern Warfare 2, we're looking at 81 FPS average. And then always the heaviest hitting game of the bunch, because we're not running it in performance mode, we're running it at high quality settings. Fortnite came in at just under 60 FPS at 54.4, but the new Unreal Engine 5.1 update in Fortnite does require that you run this in a different mode. If you want to get the best, you want the highest FPS, run it in performance mode. If you're looking at 1080p high, the Arc A770 can't put up quite 60 FPS, so maybe drop the settings a little bit there. In a CPU application like Cinebench R23, we managed to get 1,700 points out of the single core score in the 13400 and 13,881 points out of the 16 threads, which if you compare that to the i9 10850K that I was talking about previously, that's a massive step up in single core performance because the 10850K can only get 1367, and it's actually really close in multi-threaded performance with the 10850K coming in about 3,000 points higher, and that's with it having 4 extra threads because it was full cores back then. 10 cores, 20 threads versus 10 cores, 16 threads. But the fact that a non-overclockable, non-high TDP chip that's cooled with its own integrated CPU cooler can actually go toe-to-toe with the 10850K, which I was putting in high-end builds just a few years ago, shows a lot of progress in the CPU industry thanks to AMD pushing higher core counts, Intel working on their hybrid architecture. We've come to a really good place where mid-tier offers something that honestly probably would pair well with a even higher end GPU going up to something like a 4070 Ti or a 4080. So you're looking at a solid 1080p high AAA gaming system. If you want high refresh rate in esports titles, you can absolutely still get those. This system for less than $1,000 can go toe to toe with any game out there right now. And from what we've seen with Intel's driver teams, I think we might actually be able to expect higher performance in some of the older games and esports titles as their drivers mature and develop. The A770 has gotten insanely better since launch, and I actually can't wait to see how it continues to progress. I was really blown away by my time with this all Intel system. I wasn't initially planning to ever do this, but the fact that I actually got to put it together showed me a new light, and I might be considering an Intel build for myself sometime in the near future. But let me know what you think of the 13400 with the Arc A770. Is this right up your alley? Are you waiting for Intel to potentially come out with a A770 refresh, or are you going to be waiting for the Battlemage GPUs? What do you think of all of this? Let me know down below in the comments. Big thanks again to Corsair for sending out all of the parts. I'll keep you updated on my editing rig upgrade that we should be doing here shortly. I've been Brett with UFD Tech. I'll catch you in the next video, friends.